coming, the drums rum-tumming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over, over there, over there, over there. Send the word over.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today to the Honor Across Arms podcast. I'm extremely excited about today's podcast. We have a great guest, Katie O'Neill. She's really the true inspiration behind Honor Across Arms podcast, and it's really about her father, what it means to her, what it means to our military community, the veteran community, and I could not be more excited to bring Katie to you all today. Katie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Josh. Everything's working out good.
That's what I like to hear. You know, it's really such an honor just to have you as a guest here on the Honor Across Arms podcast today, and I can't say thank you enough.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way, but I'm not used to being on this side.
Well, that's a good thing. That's, you know, like I always say, we ask the tough questions here on these podcasts. So I think the tough interviews are the ones where the people behind the scenes, the ones that are making things happen, when they come out from behind the curtains, if you will, like the big Oz, and get the information out to the listeners, that really makes a difference, you know. So, Katie, if you don't mind, before we get started, let's tell the listeners where you're located at geographically in the country today.
I actually live and work out of Sarasota and Manatee County here in sunny Florida on the Gulf Coast. And I travel back and forth and go wherever I need to and do whatever needs to be done to make sure the shows are carried out. And
let's talk about that a little bit. You know, you say the shows. I don't think, you know, we don't oftentimes get into what our veterans do as a potential career or what they're doing right now. You know, it's more about their service, right? But what do you do? Because it has a direct implication to the Honor Across Arms podcast.
Well, I am the program director for Society Bites Radio, and that is a worldwide Wi-Fi station. They call it hybrid iRadio now. And by being a part of something bigger than me is it's a feeling very similar to when I was in the military. It's not all about each of us individually. It's about all of us together.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So you are really the instrument behind putting these podcasts together, and I want our listeners to really understand that. And when you do the recording and the producing of these shows, how many countries and how many listeners do you think we go out to?
Well, I can tell you that we have actually hit 149 countries now. And
wow.
There are over 450 directories, which doesn't mean a whole lot to the listening community because they don't understand the radio jargon. But what that translates to is approximately 100 million listeners around the world, and probably over 5 million have heard or are listening to Society Bites Radio. So
wow, that is phenomenal.
We average about 7,000 listeners a day.
Wow. Golly, that's so amazing. You know, really putting these shows on is just phenomenal, and getting the information out to the listeners who want to understand what is the veteran community made up of? You know, who are these men and women that have served? What are they doing now? What is service like? When you had the inspiration for producing and putting together the Honor Across Arms podcast, where did that come from?
Well, I am a military vet. I spent 8 years in the Navy Reserves. Did never once get called up for active duty, so because of that, I don't receive the benefits that our full active duty members do,
right.
Which means that I literally had to keep working and keep developing myself and my skills the whole time I was in the military. So I worked two jobs, basically, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. And luckily, I worked for companies that understood that I had to go when I was called.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was a big deal. But this particular podcast I came up with because it actually had a twofold action for it. One was in honor of my father, who has since passed away and was also military, and my mother, who has also passed away, and she is also military.
Wow.
And I wanted to include people that never got to tell their stories.
Sure.
And, we understand that war can be ugly. We
You
know
can.
that death happens. We know that carnage happens. But that's not the things that I wanted to focus on in this show. I wanted
Right.
people to understand that our military veterans are not just soldiers.
Right.
They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're chefs, they have a number of talents that maybe the military geared them for, maybe the military trained them, maybe they
Hmm.
got their GI Bill and went to college and did something after they got out of the military. But military people are an unusual breed of people. I have always said that I would hire a military person before I would hire a civilian.
Absolutely.
And there are a couple of reasons for that. One in particular was because of the fact that they understand discipline. A
Hmm.
military person understands the chain of command,
Right.
and they understand that when handed a task, they're to do it, and there's no questions asked. That's what we are trained to do. So by offering that to our veteran community, there's no excuse for people not hiring someone from the military.
That's
They,
right.
they have the best skills, they have the best work ethics, and they have something to contribute. So,
And they have experience,
yeah,
real life
they have
experience,
real life experience. You're absolutely right. And for the purposes of this show, we want to show the good side of things that can come out of the military. People who've maybe they came over here after being in the military and had a horrible experience on active duty, but
Hmm.
yet they've managed to overcome whatever they felt or whatever they were going through and made very productive lives for themselves. And this is where they
Right.
get to tell that story.
Well, I think the thing that, got me most excited about it when you and I sat down and talked about the Honor Across Arms podcast and hosting it was that you wanted to do exactly that. Oftentimes, and it's unfortunate really right now that when people think about our veteran community, they think about us as broken. And that's not what we are at all. We learn how to deal with the issues that we have, if some of us suffer some of those issues, but we press on and we move forward and we complete that mission that you were talking about earlier.
Right.
So when you said, "Hey, I want an uplifting, podcast. Let's really get the message out there." I was all in because of that. Because it was not that let's relive war, let's relive the negativity, let's talk about the bad stuff. This was actually about lifting up our service, lifting up our men and women who have served, and really bringing them to the forefront and letting people understand them and who we are now. So I was really excited about it when we initially talked about it. And it's been an absolute honor just to host this and be a part of this because of what it means to you. So, with your mom and dad both serving, what did they serve in, if you don't mind?
They were both Army. Mother
Okay.
was, she was your typical Radar O'Reilly. She was the corporal.
Okay.
My dad retired out of the military as a master sergeant,
Wow.
and we had a very strict upbringing, to say the least. I'm just one of 5 members of my family that did military time of some kind.
Wow.
Unfortunately, 2 of my siblings were put out of the military due to medical issues, and me and my mom and my dad completed our stints for the most part. Mom and dad met and married in Yokohama, Japan, where they were both
Wow.
stationed at the time.
That's so neat.
And
That's neat.
these two people, uh, they overcame things back in that day that we can't even fathom today.
Right.
I mean, Korea was not something anybody really wanted to go do. It was the first
No.
Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the way I look at it. Um, between between Ho Chi Minh and Westmoreland, I don't know who did the most damage,
Right.
but
And that's a real good question too. You know.
that's okay. Dad was one of those soldiers. He was special forces, so he was beyond Green Beret.
Okay.
They didn't even have Green Beret when he was there. I mean,
What years are we talking about, Katie,
we're
with his
talking
service?
19. Let's see. They met and married in 1951, and Dad
Wow.
had probably. I'm guessing that he probably had 6 or 7 years under his belt at that time because Mom was 17 when she married Dad. He was 21. My brother was born in June of 1952. So Mother would have already been out by then, and Dad was finishing. He finally retired when we moved to Texas because that Fort Hood was his last station.
Okay.
And I can remember the very night that we were at the um, mess having strawberry shortcake to celebrate.
Oh, that's so awesome.
I might have been 3, 4 years old at the time. I can't even believe that I can remember it, but I can.
What a memory. What a memory. Wow. So, I think one of the neatest things is that people can come from, and actually, before we get to that, where's your mother from and where's your father from originally?
Okay, Dad was from Kinsley, Kansas. Spent a lot of his
Okay.
time busting broncs in Nebraska before he became of age to go to the service. My mother was born and raised in South Carolina, and
Okay.
she grew up on a cotton farm where she was raised by her grandmother and picked cotton.
Wow. That's the thing about the military is you will have people from completely different walks of life who, for the most part, are never going to meet. That would typically not be something that happens where most people who live in Kansas, grow up in Kansas, they're going to end up in Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing in South Carolina, same thing. But when you join the military, it brings people together from all kinds of different walks of life. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing, like my wife and I, we got so lucky. We're from completely different worlds, completely different worlds. But when you put us into a melting pot together and make us work together, you learn a lot about somebody and you learn that, hey, you can be completely different and still like somebody. And that's what's so amazing about your parents is they met in Japan. From South Carolina, your mom, from your dad from Kansas, and here they are in Japan and meet and fall in love.
Well,
I mean, what kind
mother
of
had
love
an
story?
ultimatum. Or not an ultimatum, but she had an ulterior motive, I should say, because apparently she knew my dad through her roommate.
Wow.
And my dad went to pick up her roommate for a date, and the date was in the shower getting ready. And mother came to the door and basically, well, how can I say this? She told him that the other girl was gone and wasn't going to go out with him, but she was available and she would go.
Oh my gosh, that is hilarious.
Now, she left the roommate in the shower getting ready for a date that never happened.
Wow.
But what makes this story so hilarious and so fun is the fact that 17 days later they were married by the American